Hello, everyone, and welcome to the QT2 Systems podcast, My Greatest Moment. We are at season 2 of this podcast series, and I'm very pleased to welcome Bill Murphy as our first guest this year. Welcome, Bill.
I'm so happy to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Yes, we were just chatting before we started recording and talking about my greatest moment, which is really the concept of this podcast, is to talk about doing something that you never thought possible. Like when you look back at it 10 years ago or 20 years, you're like, I can't believe I just did that. Like it's just not even in the realm of possibility. And talking with you, you had so many, like if I could look at this and we'll walk through them, but so many times where you did something that you're like, oh, I didn't think I could do that. But I think that that's not what your greatest moment is about, breaking through, and not about any specific race or time within a race. Um, so I want to talk you through, we're going to get there, but I want to start by saying that your maybe biggest thing is still ahead of you, right? Later this year, you're going to be doing the Great World Race, 7 marathons in 7 days.
Yeah, seven
The
continents.
Wish Foundation, right? Yeah. So take that in, like for those that listening to this right now, take that in and how big that is. And then now, Bill, I want you to walk back and tell me about how you got into endurance sports and what the timing and circumstances of that is.
Yeah, well, funny story. Just it was I got into running late. I never did more than a 5K, I don't think, in my life, and that was once or twice. And I think we were just it was 2007. I was 30. No, it was 2008. Or going into 2008, I was 37, and a bunch of buddies and I were talking about the Boston Marathon and how great it would be to do the Boston Marathon next year in April, so 4 months away. And um, it got, having a few drinks and high-fiving and thinking this would be a great bonding experience to do the Boston Marathon. No one had any clue on really what that entailed, other than it was 26.2 miles. And and then so in looking at that, the next week or so, started researching. I was like, wait a second, this Boston Marathon thing is legit. Like you actually have to qualify to run the Boston Marathon. And again, I never did anything more than 5K, had no idea about racing or running or anything. And then so I saw, well, wait a second, there's got to be a way to get in because not everyone can qualify. Not everyone's that fast, right? And I started researching that, well, maybe there's a way with charity. And so I researched a few charities, and one was Dana Farber. And I applied with Dana Farber Cancer Research, and that my dedicated that to my grandfather who had passed of esophageal cancer. And so I was gonna run for him. And but the application process was arduous. I felt like I was on like this world-class interview to get accepted into the Boston Marathon. Like I think I went through like 3 interviews with Dana Farber to accept me. Are you really committed? Are you really gonna run? Are you really gonna, you've never done this before? Like how much? I said, okay, what will it take for you to accept me? Because now I'm nervous. And I actually started training before I got accepted into the Boston Marathon. So because this was the end of January, I started training January 1, right? 4 months. I did, and I pulled up Runner's World magazine 16-week guide to running a marathon. That's what I did.
Okay.
It didn't talk about nutrition, by the way, so that's a whole nother problem. But I just was going to will myself there, and follow this program. But I still wasn't accepted until the end of January, and go through this process. And I just said, you know what? I'll up my fundraising efforts if that will work. Yes, that will work. And so they accepted me, and I had already started training. And I was like, this is painful. So now we're in New England, and it was a rough winter, and it was like morning, dark, snowy, windy. It's just terrible New England weather. And so like, I think I had maybe a phone flashlight or a little flashlight or something. Cars never saw you diving out of the way into snowbanks and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, this is not fun. But I was like, there's a meaning, there's a purpose. So I knew I had to keep the commitment, right? Because I wanted to quit the second I stepped a foot on that pavement to start running. And so do the Boston Marathon that year. That was 2000, I think it was 2008. And I said, I am done. Never again. I did 26.2 miles. And guess what? I did it the next year. And I did it for Dana Farber again. What I realized, um, going through that process and I hated running while I was running. But what was happening was I realized that on these long runs, like these ideas, these epiphanies, these solutions to problems in work, in life, in business, whatever started coming to me on these long runs. I was like, oh, I just figured this out, and I figured this out, and I would actually run when I got home. I'd start writing, journaling things, the ideas that I got that had never came to me. And that's when I started to realize that I didn't like the running, but I liked what was happening to me. And I guess so that was the runner's high. Like, as cliche as we can think that term is, that's a real thing. And that's how I interpret runner's high now. Is like, oh man, you just get these endorphins, this dopamine hit, these things come to you. You get flooded with all these good feelings, good vibes that no drug could provide, and you're on a high, right? And so I started like documenting all these things, and I found that like everything was working for me a lot better because of some of the solutions I came with, through the running experience that I didn't like.
Yeah. So I'm curious though. So it's one thing you're having, like, just taking you back to your first, when you first got the concept of doing this, hanging out with your friends, having some beers, and you're like, oh, let's run Boston. Okay. But once you decided it was something you wanted to do, like, you had to work really hard just to get yourself there. So it never, like, the idea of, oh, well, maybe I don't really want it. That never really entered your head.
I think that what I had going for me, like I wasn't a world-class athlete or anything, but what I had going for me is if I committed,
Yeah.
I was going to do it.
Right.
So like there was no turning back. Like
Yeah.
quitting was not an option. So like, okay, if I work as hard as I possibly can, I can accomplish this. And again, that's the will. I'll will myself there. I had my 16-week program that I followed to a T, and I would never take a day off. Like I knew that I couldn't afford to take time off. You know what's really funny is a few people told me how bad Heartbreak Hill was. Mile 22, mile 23 in Boston. Like, this Heartbreak Hill is gonna kill you. So what I did was I was like, okay, so if this is that bad, then I need to find the steepest hill that I possibly can in my town. And I would run that, 2, 3 times a week, and I would run that hill, and it was like a mile and a quarter long. And I would run it, and I'd run it, and I'd run it, and I'd run it. And so when I was at like mile 20, my first marathon, when I was at like mile 24 or so, I said, where's Heartbreak Hill? I thought we were having Heartbreak Hill. Dude, we just passed it. I was like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Like again, I wasn't a speed demon or anything. But I went through I went through something that I thought was going to be way worse because I was prepared for something that was going to be almost insurmountable, and was training. I was making my training like game day every day, like the marathon day, thinking that's what I was doing. So, just it's like putting in the effort, and our effort based in training.
Yeah. So quitting is not a choice, but you could pick something that was smaller than you picked, right? I mean, but you're setting these really lofty things, and that's where I want to go to your next. So you did a bunch of marathons, and then you're like, triathlon. So, okay, so tell me that. Tell me the story of how you decided to do your first triathlon.
Yeah, it was. So I took a break. I didn't run a marathon for about 10 years or so. I was playing park league football. I was coaching my kids in sports. I was doing a lot of like working out martial arts. I was doing a lot of other things. And then it was 2019, and I was like, you know what? I wanna raise some money for Make a Wish. I wanna do some endurance stuff and just give it a shot. And so like I I get again, I took the probably the enhanced version of Runner's World magazine 16-week training, and I really did this January 1, go out, and maybe it was January 2nd, but whatever, go out and train for that April third week, April Monday, Patriots Day in Boston. And so 2019, like I trained, but again, I wasn't into the nutrition. I didn't really pay attention to it. I didn't understand it. But before that race, I was just kind of in my head cocky. Like, listen, I've done this a few times. Like, I think it was 3 times. I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna will myself to get there. And so, like, I was thinking maybe I could just do sub 4, no problem, just will. And so in Boston, it was a rainy day. It was like 45, 50 degrees, and we're sitting around, and you have a lot of downtime if you ever do Boston. Like you get to the village and you just wait and wait and wait and wait and wait, because you have to get to the village early, right? I think that this year, I think there's like 36,000 people doing it. It's crazy, but sitting around, and so there's a few guys that we're talking to, and we're just all talking. And one guy was an ultra marathon, and he was from Colorado. I think he had just done Leadville, and I think it's 135 miles, right? Trail run. And I actually could not even believe that. It's more than a marathon on top of 100 miles. I was like, that's incredible. And then another guy from Canada was talking about, like, I think we had one cold day that was pretty miserable out, and they said don't go out and train in this. And he was from Canada, and he was talking about how every day was that day, and he had to wear these spikes to get his training in. And I was like, these guys are doing something incredible. And so, like, I thought I was preparing for something, and these guys were way prepared, and their mindset was, that's one thing I noticed was their mindset. They were so dialed in, and the can-do attitude, and they were humble too. And another guy was talking about his marathons, and he was it was April, so he's running the Boston Marathon to get his endurance up for the upcoming Ironman season. So I'm like, an Ironman? Like, isn't that like a 2 mile swim, 2.4 mile swim? And don't you do like 100 miles on a bike? You do 112 miles on a bike. And then you run a whole marathon after that? Like, is that even physically possible? Like, I actually asked that question. I was like, I don't understand how you could do that. Like, the marathon's one thing, but like to physically do that. So I'm doing this. So now a race starts, and I'm running. I'm coasting the first 12 miles. I think I'm gonna PR it, and the weather just turns. It's New England weather, and I think it's sunny, sun beating down, and turns rainy and cold and windy, and everything goes to hell in a handbasket. And like I avoided my nutrition like I always do, because when I wanted a drink, I take a drink. When gels, I didn't want to try a gel, so I wouldn't do anything like that. Maybe a banana here and there, but mile 18, 19, like I started cramping up, jelly legs, and I'm like every 2/10 of a mile I had to walk. So I was getting really upset with myself. My mind said go, 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 because that was the whole will thing. I'm gonna will myself to get there. But my legs were like, screw you, dude. You need to take a nap, man. And so I was so mad at myself. I'm thinking about the conversation prior to the race, and how these guys all did things. And I was like, you know what? That's incredible. Anything is possible if, we prepare and put our mind to it. Not just put your mind to it, but prepare. So I kind of I was so intrigued by the Ironman stories. Like, you know what? I got to try this Ironman thing. So I finally finished the Boston marathon that day. I think it was like 4:20 or somewhere around there. And I was just secretly thinking to myself about that Ironman. I remember I went home, and I think I Googled, Ironman and how to train and how to do all sorts of stuff. Runner's World didn't have anything, so I realized that I had to get actually a coach. So I started, looking up forums and looking up some various things, and like everyone's saying, 6 months with no experience, you really shouldn't do that. There's not enough time, and I'm getting all these no's. And then finally, a couple of days later, I found a coach, and it got to the point where, I wasn't swimming, and I hadn't swum in 30 years, and I didn't have a bike. But I said, oh yeah, I told a coach I knew, who had just done a couple of Ironmans, and she was certified to coach, and I said, yeah, I'm getting a bike, and I'm starting to dabble in the water again. which I knew that I probably needed to say for her to accept me. And so she did, and then I signed up for the Florida Ironman. So Boston Marathon was, third week of April, the Monday, third week of April. And I think the Florida Ironman that year in 2019 was like November, the first Saturday in November, whatever that was.
Mhm.
And the first thing I did is go make an appointment to get a bike, and this bike fitting was a thing. I was like, no, I just want a bike to ride, and I know where my seat is, and I know where my hands need to be. And they're like, no, you need to be fitted. And so they're like, all right, let's get in the parking lot, let's fit you, and just make sure you're good and make sure everything works. They put these shoes on me. They took my, had to take my sneakers off and put these shoes on where I clipped in. Can you imagine that? Clipping in to some pedals. And I was like, well, I better get my feet out fast when I'm practicing in the parking lot because I don't want to fall over. Well, I thought they were in pretty tight, and of course I get back and I'm trying to kick out, and just right in front of them. And they're like, Iron Man, huh? I was like, give me my bike, shut up, I'm out of here. And I fell quite a few times in traffic doing the same thing. So embarrassing. We want to talk about not quitting. You want to quit so badly, and then during that time, obviously going to the Y, getting in the pool. The first time I got in the pool, I did 2 laps. I kid you not, 2 laps. And the second lap, I got out. I sat on the edge of the pool, and I was ready. I was like, I can't. I was saying to myself, my self-talk was, I can't do this. And I never really spoke like that, and I never would allow that kind of that self-doubt to creep in like it did. And it was like overwhelming me, and anxiety and sweat and just panic was setting in. And I was like, I can't do this. And so the thing that saved me that day to get back in that pool was declaring my goals. And I declared to my kids that I was going to do this crazy triathlon called an Ironman this year. And I told my kids I was going to do that. And I'm like, that's so cool. And then, it's really cool because they were at the Boston Marathon. And so knowing that I said that, I could not let them down because I told them that I was going to do something, because I raised them my whole life as their coach. Listen, I don't care if you don't like baseball now or softball now or football now or whatever. You stick out the season. You don't quit. We don't quit. We don't sign up and quit. And so I would never ever be able to live with myself if I told my kids I was going to do something and quit. All these years I was a fraud. No way. So that motivation, that purpose, that why kept me going the whole 6 months of training. I never missed one workout ever, because I knew how important it was, especially not knowing what I was really doing.
Right.
And so I finished 13:56.
All right.
Uh,
There you go.
13:56. And so the biggest, the most incredible takeaway that day, and I love Ironman's motto is anything is possible, right? So when it's dark, when it's dark and you're feeling like you're in dark mode, and you're like, man, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can finish. I don't know. I was halfway through the marathon, and I was just like, I'm just gonna walk it and hope I can finish in under 17 hours. Like, I'm just gonna walk it. And I get to an aid station, and I see a guy running past, and it's like it's like clicking on the pavement, and he's got American flag holding up, and he had 2 blades on, no legs, and he's got the American flag, and he must have been in the military and had some service backpack on. And I was like, you want to talk about motivation? Like, this guy is doing something really incredible, and I have 2 perfectly good legs, and he's doing this. So it's time to start running. There's no walking, and it was probably run, hobble, walk, but like that just gave me such a second wind, new inspiration and motivation, and that anything is possible. Like I would never forget that motto, anything is possible, because it's so true. Anything is possible, and we are capable of way more than we ever thought possible.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, so you've done all these things and you keep like finding new challenges, but at some, I mean, from when we were talking before, at some point it became about more than testing your limits, right? And so talk to me a little bit about how that transformation came about.
Yeah, well, it's still to this day about pushing through limits, and that's where, some of the endurance ultra marathons where again, the self-doubt overwhelms me, and I always feel inferior, just seeing the people that do it, and I have to like over prepare to say to myself, like, I can hang and at least, com compete at my level to get this done. Yes, it's not going to be world class, and it's not going to be, I'm not going to, there's not going to be any record set here, but it's going to be, I'm going to push my limits to get to the finish line. And like, again, the quitting is not an option. So like, if we say we're going to do it, we're going to do it. Unless you're incredibly injured, I believe in pivoting, but not quitting. So whatever it takes,
Mhm.
we're gonna get there. Like you just did your your world champion Ironman, and you pivoted on the marathon, and kudos to you on an incredible finish. And so like you didn't quit, and you had your why, you had your meaning. So I think if we identify our biggest meaning, our biggest why within ourselves, we're competing with ourselves, and we don't have to worry about everybody else, what
Mhm.
everyone else is doing. Like I'm a big scoreboard watcher, like in business and some other things. Like I'm very competitive, but like I learned to let some of that go and not be so prideful about it, where I can just compete within
Mhm.
and break my own limits and break through some of my own barriers. And the learning, the life lessons that you learn by doing that, it just helps you in all areas of your life. And so another reason that I never quit is like I try to attach a lot of these things that we do to various charities. And so when we commit to some of these races, when we commit to some of these things, I'll say, you know what, my why is these three things and this charity. So like I know that if the first two don't work out, then I have that charity why to hold on to. Um, I don't know if you know this, Reem, but one of the marathons I did was a virtual Boston Marathon, and I was 60 days out. It was during COVID. It was 2021 or 22. I was 60 days out, and I was walking down my stairs, and I was texting and walking at 5 a.m. in the morning in the dark, which I don't recommend doing, and I missed the two bottom stairs.
Oof.
And I was actually texting my daughter because she was on a dentist appointment, and I just want to wish her good luck. And I missed two bottom stairs, and when I hit my the the pain just ran right up my thigh. I actually thought I broke my leg. And so I'm rolling around on the floor in just white hot seething pain, blackout pain almost, right? And just like crawling because I couldn't even get up. I couldn't even get up. And then I touched my leg, and it was like the top of my thigh was squishy. And I was like, well, that's not, is that a bone? Because bones aren't squishy. And so I tore my quad,
Yeah.
and 60 days out from the Boston Marathon. I go to the hospital, and they're like, we need to do surgery right away. So they did surgery the next day. And then, my friends and family and Make-A-Wish, who I was running the marathon for virtually, sends a condolence email or, well-wishing email, and just like, hey, sorry, we'll try to save your registration for next year, and you can run first next year. We'll put you in Boston Marathon next year. And maybe it was the pain meds or the drugs, but I immediately shot back in an email like, hold on, I'm going to figure out a way to do this marathon. And I don't know how, I don't know where, I don't know what. And so that year that they moved the Boston Marathon to October. So
Right.
it's never been moved. It was always April, and it's never moved. And it was virtual. So you could actually do a Boston Marathon. So we start applying with the BAA, Boston Athletic Association, to get accepted with crutches. And they're like, no freaking way. This is a liability. You can't do this on crutches. And they're like, well, all right, what about virtually? So we start that. So I I'm like, okay, now I'm not going to sit around and feel bad for myself that I just got hurt. I have a purpose and a meaning and a why. And what my why was, when they would ask me like, why do you want to do this? What do you got to prove? 60 days out, you just blew out your leg. No one's going to blame you for not running this year for Make-A-Wish. And I said, listen, these kids that are diagnosed with this critical illness, they don't have a choice
Yeah.
but to compete, but to keep going, but to keep, fighting to fight. Why am I any different? If I can do it somehow, some way, I will. And so like a day or two later, I start training around my pool with my dog and crutches. And so when I timed myself the first day I went around that pool on crutches, I was gonna do the marathon virtually in like 24 hours.
Okay.
It was the most painful, arduous, tedious, mind-blowing task that I ever did. The chafing, the bloody hands and the scowl, everything was just like, oh no, what did I do and what did I say? So I declared it. I said I was going to do it. Well, I got a nice set of crutches, which helped me. I got a better brace, which helped me. Then I start moving a lot better, a lot faster. I'm really training. I'm going to the parks on the weekends and just training around the track. And I must have looked like a psycho because I was always there going around the track at little kids soccer games that were going on throughout the day. And I must have thought like, hey, there's some crazy dude down here at the little kids soccer games going around for 3 hours. What's he doing on crutches for so long? So that was my training. And we did it virtually at my alma mater, Worcester State University. We did the marathon on crutches 60 days after I tore my quad. And fun fact was we were like the CEO of Make-A-Wish was actually with me. He's like, hey, you're like 6 minutes off a world record on crutches.
Really?
Yeah. So like we did it in like 6 hours, 17 minutes on crutches, unofficial. I think it was an unofficial record, um, but I will tell, this is what happened. And all these people, all these supporters going around with me. And the last 3 miles, I had a Make-A-Wish recipient, and she was very healthy. She had pancreatitis and in high school, and so she was a senior, and she was an ambassador for Make-A-Wish. And she comes out, and she's with me, and we're one-on-one, and it's just like everyone had done their laps with me, and we're just going and we're talking. And she's like, I can't believe you're doing this. It's so inspirational. You're on crutches doing a marathon. This is great. And she's like, just talking me up, and just like I feel like I'm not even really working with this young girl. And I was like, you're the inspiration. You're the reason that I'm doing this. This is so cool. Like we're back and forth, and next thing you know, we finish. And later on that night, I look at my time. My fastest time in that 26.2 crutched marathon was the last 3 miles with my Make-A-Wish friend. How is that cool, right?
It's so cool. I mean, it's
People
just,
can carry you.
yeah.
People can carry you. And so I want to take that. And so I want to make a confession, Reem. What I've always done is I've always avoided my supporters and my family and people. When I declare something, I've avoided them while I'm training, while I'm working out, during the race. Like I put blinders on and say, you know what? I need to focus. I need to have energy because I got to conserve my energy. And I'm going to not pay attention, and I'm just going to go. And I used to think when people were high-fiving you that if I keep high-fiving, I'm losing energy. And if I take a watermelon from a little kid that's handing it out on a marathon, like, that's just energy. Like, don't do any of that stuff. Like, go across the street and mind your business. And what I realized after that marathon is like people can make a difference and pick you up. So let the crowd that's supporting you, let your loved ones that's supporting you be your supporters, and let them in and open that up. High five everybody. Take that positive energy and let it carry you through your darkest moments, and it will make a difference. You will feel like you're floating when you let people that want to see you do well, that are rooting for you, in.
Yeah. I mean, that's so different because I was just thinking when I was in in Nice last week, and there's all these people in the crowds, and they're all yelling at me. I'm like, go away. You would let them come in. It would have
Well,
but
you
towards the
have,
end of the race when I'm really struggling, and then people are talking to me and they're like, come on, you're here, you do this, you keep on going one step at a time. And I took all of that in, and that did help me for sure. That's
yeah.
that positive, the positive
Closing
energy, the
people
belief.
out and looking at the ones that really care about you, and you make them barriers in your journey, and it's not like they're not in your way, they're along your way. So let it open up and just see that beauty. Like now when I run or do these, Coach Hillary will say to me all the time, like, you get to do this. We get to do this. Like, so like when I ever hear her in my head, like I'm looking around, like I'm in a different state, a different place, different, and I'm like enjoying as much as like, you're on mile 80 of the the windy, the 40-mile-an-hour crosswinds of the bike, you're like still looking around like, that's freaking cool. Or look at that deer, look at all those deer over there, or look at this, or look at that, you look at that gorgeous scenery, or whatever it is, and you can take that stuff in. When you put your head down and have the blinders on, and you don't want to take that in. Listen, that used to be my thing, and I used to think that was just energy taking, but now that's just, I think it just gives you momentum to keep going. And again, if you're world class and you need to put your head down and not pay attention to anything, like, so be it. That's not where I'm going with this. I need to start to let people in because I closed people off before.
So, Boston Marathon, virtual Boston Marathon with Make-A-Wish Foundation, then you've continued to work with Make-A-Wish over the years, right? So, tell me now, we've talked getting into endurance sports, marathons, Ironman events. Then your next, I mean, now recently you've gotten into the ultra marathons, right? So how did you go in that, start going in that direction?
Yeah, again, that was the limit pushing. Like, what can we do? How is that? Like, I still didn't think that was, I could do a step more than 26.2 miles in my life. Even on top of the Ironman, it was just like, oh man, that's a lot. I'm not really a great runner. You've even helped me like with my running, with your video analysis and everything, getting my feet off the ground. So it's like, all right, I need to improve. I need to improve my running. And so in order to do some of these things, I need to be a better runner. So like totally immersing myself into what I needed to do. And it was about pushing limits. And so I did my first ultra last year. It's called the Sun Up Sundown. It was qualifying race for the Anchor Down Ultra, which was a 24-hour race in Rhode Island. And the Sun Up Sundown was like 40 miles we did in 12 hours. And then, the Anchor Down was the 24-hour race. And I had two goals. And the goal was, so it was 6, 12, and 24 hours. And so my goal was I got to get 24 hours done because that's me just competing with myself, not no one else. And then I said a nice goal behind that would be 100 miles. Well, I fell way short of the 100 miles, but I did do the 24 hours, and the weather was crazy. I got up to almost 90 degrees, and Coach Hillary was wonderful, and she ran the back half of that with me to keep me going. But um, I fell short because I didn't know what to expect on the mileage. So it
Mhm.
was rainy. A lot of people dropped out of the 24-hour. More than half dropped out of the 24 hours because there was so many injuries with the rain. Um, people falling down and getting hurt and banging up their legs and ankles, and there was quite a few people that got pretty banged up. And so like to hang in there and finish 24 hours, yes, I wasn't thrilled with my mileage. I think we ended up at 71 or so. When you have a goal, a lot higher than that. But I knew at that point that I just needed to stick it out. And that was where quitting's not an option. My family came for the last couple hours and it was like, I need to keep going. And so like if you don't let those emotions that want to overtake you because your body's hurting, and you can find a reason why to keep you going. And like I wasn't gonna stop with my family there. They got to do the last 2-mile loop with me, which is so cool. And like that, you want to talk about greatest moments, like, wow, you know, on the 23rd hour of a 24-hour race, your family and friends, you know, some of your friends and your coach get to do it with you. It's just like, that's so cool. And that's where you let people in, you know, and like that was probably the easiest couple miles, you know, in that 24-hour race.
Yeah, to have that support around you, and yeah.
Yeah.
So
And then we
now,
have the Great World Race now.
yeah, that's where I want to go. So what is the Great World Race? What do you talk about?
Yeah, it's 7 marathons, 7 continents, 7 days, and it's in no it's in a couple months, November, and we start in Antarctica, and um didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know. I thought it was just penguins, not people, that were in Antarctica, but it's actually a thing. You can do it. And so I was actually just listening to a podcast on the Great World Race, and they're doing the race course. It's off the airstrip where we fly in. It's Fangs, Antarctica. And off the airstrip, what they have to do is they have to get equipment for the crevasses, which are breaks in the glacier. And if they get snow covered, you could fall through and go way down and probably never be heard from again, or break a lot of bones or whatever. And so they have to scout for the crevasses as they do the course. I thought that was, I don't want to say pretty cool, but interesting.
I'm really glad that they're doing that.
But cool if you don't, you know, as long as we don't step on any. And then, you know, it's just like you have to wear goggles and you have to this because of the sun glare you have a lot of sunblock for the because of the glare off the snow is like blinding. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. So it's so cool. And that's where we start and go around the world.
All
7 days.
7 days. So how do you get from race to race?
Yeah, charter plane, and we start in we all meet in Cape Town, South Africa. And we'll go there for a few days and kind of get acclimated to you know, what we need to do for the race and logistics and all that other stuff. Then we leave for Antarctica, go back to Cape Town, we run there. Then we go to Australia and then over to Istanbul. Now Istanbul is Asia and Europe. So we get two races there, back-to-back days, and that's where we stay that one time. Over to South America, Cartagena, and then finish up in Miami, and all in 7 days.
7 days, and time zones though. I mean, that's
Yeah,
so
I'm trying. I think we gain. I think it works in our favor where we get some time because um you're so it's maybe 24 hours. You get like 29 hours or
yeah.
30 hours. You know, but here's the thing. I believe it's 8 hours from touchdown of the plane to takeoff. So you get 8 hours to finish the marathon. So, you know, if you're battling some, I mean, let's face it, you know, people are gonna have some ailments, right? I mean, you're gonna have some stuff in 7 days. I mean, especially when you're sleeping on a plane, you get 8 hours. If you have to just, you know, walk one or whatever, or run, walk, hobble one, that might be expected to get it done. And we're running this for you know, for Make-A-Wish, and so it's running the world. We're running the world for wishes, and it's pretty cool. I think we got internationally involved with Make-A-Wish as well. So I've been doing a lot of fundraising for Make-A-Wish. It's just something that has been near and dear to me since 2006, and then through my business in the mortgage and real estate business, we give a portion of our proceeds to Make-A-Wish, and we've been doing that since 2006. It's not something new, but I really wanted to, you know, try to take this incredible opportunity and make a difference and bring awareness to Make-A-Wish and give back in that regard. So again, you know, my why, right? So if there's some doubt, if there's some things where like I can't go on, I always try to put myself. I'm not only doing it for myself, but I have a lot of people that are watching what we do, and we need to make sure that, you know, we're bringing awareness. I want to represent very well for the cause that I'm running for. So that's what we're doing.
So how much, what's your fundraising goal?
50,000 we're trying to raise
Fifty.
for Make-A-Wish. And we got some fundraising events that we're putting together and starting to ask, family, friends, clients of our business to help out. And then there's, again, there's actually looks like there's some international and international traction um that's coming about. And it's super exciting, talk to some folks and some families, and they're excited about it.
Yeah. So if someone who's watching this podcast now wants to make a donation to you, what's the best way to do that?
Um, we can put a link in, right? We can
Mhm.
send a link in the notes. Does
Great.
that sound okay?
Yeah, we can absolutely do that.
That would
So,
be great. I'd really appreciate that.
yeah. Um, what kind of wishes, like having, okay, so you've worked with Make-A-Wish now for almost 2 decades, right? So what kinds of things do kids wish for?
The biggest in the US is Disney and Hawaii. Those are the two big. Those are the two of your biggest. But how I fell in love, why Make-A-Wish stuck with me, my why, right? So, a Boston sports fan. When I started to see all these ESPN stories, all these kids, they got to see, the Tom Brady's, and Tom Brady would give his time with these kids and be on ESPN. David Ortiz, baseball for Red Sox slugger, and Teddy Bruschi, linebacker of the Patriots. And I used to see all these athletes, giving their time, and these kids just smile from ear to ear. And I was I was going to a lot of conferences, and there was this one conference that had Make-A-Wish booth, and then I saw some stories and some videos of some of the kids and different wishes that they put together. And the third thing was that same year or a year later, I took my kids down to Disney. And I see these kids in tie-dye shirts and their families, and they were Wish kids, and some are in wheelchairs, some are in crutches or walkers or whatever, and you knew they were Wish kids. And the one thing I always remembered, and my kids were very, very young, and they were just complaining about the Florida heat, and they were just like, "Get me home, get me in the pool, get me." We don't want to, it's a small world, after all, and all this other stuff. But you see these smiles from ear to ear on the kids and their families. Everyone's smiling. So what that told me was, no matter what ever happened after that vacation, they would have these memories to last them forever. And the experience that they were able to um, go through during that rough time, because these kids, they have critical illnesses, right? It's not terminal illnesses, but critical illnesses. To get through that, and just all the all the pain and problems go away for that week for the most part, and they're able to just enjoy and take it all. And I thought that was incredible. Like, I think that was so incredible. So some of the other crazy wishes is like, we were part of a kid that wanted a hobbit house in his backyard, and we've seen these incredible swing sets. And we actually took a kid to put a kid to college who was really trying to advance in his studies. My own cousin had muscular dystrophy, and he was almost 18, and 18 was the cutoff, and he was really struggling, and um, he was losing his faculties. And so he really loved music, really loved the social media, really loved communicating with people, but he couldn't really do that anymore because he couldn't be on his computer. Well, he got a wish granted before his 18th birthday. They took him to the Apple store, and they fitted him with um, voice control, head movement activated computer, and it gave him new life, where he was able to listen to his music, able to be creative, able to engage. And I really think that gave him more time with us and more time here to enjoy that, those last couple of years that he wouldn't have had. So it's a wide array. I mean, there's firemen wish kids, there's police wish kids. There's even a kid that wanted to be a garbage man locally, that went around and picked up garbage, and that's what he wanted to do. And it was waste management, and they were incredible with this kid, and the video was amazing. And it's just so feel good. And what these kids it's feel good with the possibilities and what these kids get, and the hope that it gives them, and that there's a healing process within that too, when you have those experiences.
Yeah. So something, when we were talking before, you came up with, I mean, a phrase that you repeated often that was stuck with me, which is you just kept saying, change the world, change the world, change the world, change within to change the world. Tell me a little, just talk a little about that.
Yeah, that's how the world race came at me. It was just like, I just had a rough year in business last year, and real estate mortgage it was just a rough year, right? So like I was blessed enough to have a little bit of success to be able to say, you know what, I'm gonna just do some things that I never would have done with my family. And I did some spiritual retreats, and I did some experiential retreats. And the theme that seemed to be with my family, when I wouldn't have ever had spent that time with them, and it was just incredible bonding with my sister, my mom, my son, my kids, my daughters. And the thing that just kept coming at me was every retreat that we went on, or every experience, it just had this change the world, like change the world, like do better. What's the greater good here? And then I kept thinking, like, okay, if we're gonna change the world, we're gonna change within, right? Because you can't go change something without changing first, right? So like I'm thinking about how I could be better, and how I could be, and I'm recognizing, when I talk to you about the journey, like I never ever opened my eyes to that before, and that was a process. And so the changing of the world is like, all right, let's do this world race and run the world for wishes, to bring awareness, to bring some, some strong fundraising, fundraising there. And so I actually was talking to a, a high school class last year, when they graduated, and I was talking about how, like, I was mentored, and it made a difference for me. And so like I could see that, and we can, when you have some success in business, it's easy to say, oh, you can give monetarily. But I was telling these kids, it's not about that, because we can all give and make a difference, and it's free. What do you mean it's free? Your time, your energy, your kindness, your gratitude, like that's all free. If you give that to somebody, you can lift somebody up pretty fast. And what that's going to do, if you're stuck, it's going to lift you up as well. So if you're like, that's why I say, if I'm ever feeling stuck, like I'll go help somebody somewhere else where they are, or I'll at least try to think of that at some point when I get out of my own way, and say, you know what, who can we help today? And if you take that approach every day, it's gonna it's gonna change your world. You will change within, and it'll make all the difference.
That's awesome, Bill. Thank you so much for taking this time. It's been just so inspirational, just listening to your stories and following you along the way. And
Well, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for you. You helped me clean up some of my running messes. And I'm grateful for QT2. I mean, Coach Hillary and everybody's been wonderful. So I've learned a lot, and I thank you for this opportunity to spread the word and spread the message and share some of my greatest moments. And I hope that someone can find that, like, if you're blocking out the people that care and love you, then maybe open up a little bit, because it does make a difference. And boy, does it become so much more enjoyable when you finish and you're able to like acknowledge that support the whole time.
for sure. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Bill.